publisher of Debris magazine, makes his first contribution to our autumn season with this report.
This is Heptonstall Church in Yorkshire, high up in the Pennines. Just over the hills there is Haworth Parsonage, where the Bronte sisters live. And this is the unlikely setting for Sylvia Plath's grave. Sylvia Plath didn't live here, she wasn't born here, she didn't die here. But the reason why she's buried here is because at the time of her death in 1963, which was by suicide, as you might know, she was legally married to Ted Hughes, our present Poet Laureate. Ted Hughes comes from a little village called Mythenroyd, which is about 2 miles from here, and both his parents are buried in the graveyard as well. Hughes brought Sylvia Plath here on numerous occasions, and despite the bleakness of the area, she liked it here. In fact, she wrote poems based on her experiences in this district, including one called November Graveyard.
At the essential landscape, stare till your eyes voice the vision dazzling on the wind. Whatever lost ghosts flare, damned, howling in their shrouds across the moor, rave on the leash of the starving mind, which peoples the bare room, the blank, untenanted air.
As you may have noticed, there's no proper headstone on the grave. The reason for this is the headstone's been taken away to be repaired after it's been vandalised at least 3 times. The reason is that on the headstone are engraved the words Sylvia Plath Hughes, poet, 1942 to 1963. And what's happened is that vandals have scratched off the name Hughes. This is in protest against the Poet Laureate, who many people have blamed for the suicide of his wife. 25 years after the death of Sylvia Plath, the myths surrounding her life continue to grow. Like other writers, painters and singers who killed themselves, the moment of her death has assumed an importance greater than her creative life. She wasn't just a neurotic bedsit suicide case, and a lot of her poems portray a love of life just as convincingly as the imagery of death in her later poems. Meanwhile, it's sad, with the state of her headstone, that a woman who led such a troubled life should still be haunted by trouble after her death.
The whole landscape loomed absolute as the antique world was, once in its earliest sway of lymph and sap, unaltered by eyes, enough to snuff the quick of her small heat out. But before the weight of stones and hills of stones could break her down to mere quartz grit in that stony light, she turned back.
32 years ago. So innocent and such a cheap jacket. If you do get the chance to go to Heptonstall, which is near Hebden Bridge, do go and see Sylvia Plath. At the time of that filming, the gravestone had been removed for repairs, and subsequently, every time they put it back, the word Hughes gets scratched off the phrase Sylvia Plath Hughes. As I said in that film, Sylvia Plath was a tragic figure, but also so much more than that. And I've just written this small format book about Sylvia Plath. It's called Sylvia Plath. It's called My Second Home, Sylvia Plath in Paris, 1956. It's part of a series of books that I've written on subjects that I'm passionate about, including Keith Haring, Courtney Love. I don't really think we have time to talk about all of those. I'm going to talk about the Sylvia Plath book. In 1956, Sylvia Plath, that was the year that she married Ted Hughes, but at the beginning of the year, she had a boyfriend called Richard Sassoon, and they had a Christmas together in Paris. Plath was an American, but she'd always dreamt of Paris. It's that idea of an imagined city. When I was a teenager, I thought, if I go to New York, I'm going to feel at home. I'm going to feel like I belong at CBGB's, watching Blondie, television, Patti Smith. Anyway, Plath had this idea of Paris, and the Christmas that she spent with Richard lived up completely to her expectations, but unfortunately, at the end of that holiday, Richard told her that he wanted to break up. Easter arrives, that's her next holiday, and she decides to go back to Paris and try and rekindle this relationship with Richard. But by that time, she'd also encountered Ted. Ted was in her head, and she arrived, and Richard had gone. He'd left the city intentionally. He was kind of avoiding her. So for nearly 2 weeks, she was on her own in Paris over Easter. And that's really what the book focuses on. She's in a hotel near Notre Dame. she kind of has space in Paris to process things that were happening in her life, that tangled love life that she'd got, but also deeper issues to do with her depression and the loss of her father, her writing. And at the end of the holiday, she decides to commit herself to Ted Hughes. And within 10 weeks, they were married. So it's like a sliding doors moment. What if Richard had been there? And the thing about Easter in Paris was that although Sylvia was alone and often very lonely, there were also days when she was really happy. And I describe a lot of the simple things that made her happy. She uses the word elated in her journals in Paris. And elated is not a word we normally associate with a poet like Sylvia Plath. Sketching in the park, enjoying the food, the art galleries, walking by the River Seine. And there are some beautiful, poignant moments of her time in Paris. And I really hope that I've done Sylvia Plath justice with the book. I really loved writing it. It's published by Confingo. They're a Manchester-based independent publisher. If you follow me on Twitter or you Google any of that information, you'll be able to order the book. And if you're interested in poetry, coming up in Guerrilla TV, it'll be episode 3, 4, not quite sure. We're going to have the poet Lem Sissay up here at the Deaf Institute as part of Guerrilla TV. Oh, and also, how great to see Tony Wilson on that little clip. Obviously, I'd love to pay tribute to him, but suffice to say, he gave so many people an opportunity, and I personally will be forever grateful to him.